Patricia Gibson.
Deputy Speaker, as we emerge from a health crisis, we are grappling with an economic crisis which could scarcely be more serious. To leave the EU in December with no extension to the Brexit transition period, something which the EU has offered, is complete madness. Yep. This oven-baked Brexit touted by the Prime Minister truly is half-baked. And the benches opposite have told us that we need to stick to this timetable to create certainty. Mr Deputy Speaker, the only thing that is certain is that we are heading for a no-deal Brexit, and that doesn't provide certainty for business or our constituents at all. And as for this myth about the broad shoulders that the Scottish taxpayers have been subjected to out of the goodness of this government's heart, we have actually received in Scotland a mere just over 4% of the entire borrowing of the UK. And given that we have 8.3% of the UK's population, I would suggest that Scotland is being sold short. And that's before I even talk about the £30 billion that was announced last week, of which Scotland received 0.1%, far less than the 8.3% our population suggested that we should have got. And whilst we in these benches welcome the furlough scheme, it has to be said that there are more holes in it than a spaghetti strainer. Now, unless the UK government, wedded as it is to Brexit ideology, unless it extends the transition period for leaving the EU, productivity in Scotland and indeed across the UK is seriously threatened, and unemployment in Scotland could conceivably reach 10%. And if the government heads off this Brexit cliff, to which 63% of Scots are opposed to, then it will rob Scotland of jobs, opportunities and prosperity, and it is something that the people of Scotland have rejected over and over again. So this so-called oven-ready Brexit continues and always has been a con. The much-vaunted easy trade deals that we were promised are, of course, nowhere in sight. And these fears are not just fears expressed by the SNP. The chorus of concern is deafening from the business world, and still this government closes its ears. And only days ago, Angela Merkel talked about the EU preparing for a no-deal Brexit with the EU. But rather than listen to these concerns raised across the devolved nations, the Prime Minister has chosen to treat the leaders of the four nations of the UK like disobedient children who won't take their medicine and sit quietly. And while he drives the UK off the Brexit cliff, and we remember the words of the union, of this being a union of equals, we know that he at the same time is doing his best to dismantle the entire devolution settlement. Now, we know that the Tories have always been hostile to devolution, so much so, Mr Deputy Speaker, that in 2016 the Tory party in Scotland was reduced to advertising in newspapers to find candidates, to find paid guns for hire, because they couldn't actually find enough true believers for their cause. And you can imagine, Mr Deputy Speaker, the quality of the candidates who applied and were eventually elected as a result of that. But the Tory contempt for devolution, is shown with the increasing attacks we have seen on the Parliament that belongs to the people of Scotland. Clearly the philosophy is, I will not give way, there's a shortage of time. Clearly the philosophy of this government is that if you cannot win elections in the constituent parts of the UK, then you simply seek to dismantle the institutions that you cannot control. And if this Tory government actually believes it can prevent Scotland from having the opportunity to choose her own future in this landscape, in any landscape, it is sadly deluded. It cannot stem the tide of independence to which itself has helped to strengthen and give rise. We stood on a manifesto of Scotland deciding her own future, much as that may be uncomfortable for some of the Tories in the opposite benches. And the Tories stood on a manifesto in Scotland of getting Brexit done. And the result of that election tells us what the people of Scotland feel. Democracy did not end in Scotland in 2014. And the reality is that this UK government is now frightened of the inevitable referendum which is to come, because it knows that support is growing as it rides roughshod over Scotland's democratic wishes.